What's up, everyone? I'm Jackie.
And I'm Lindsay.
And we are Women Leaders in Sports Medicine.
Here to help you grow your game and own your game.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're super excited to have Katlyn Haycock, with us. Kate, you are currently at the University of Michigan and you've been there for the past 8 years, correct?
Yep. In August, it will be 9 years. So it's gone by really quickly.
It's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah. So usually when we start off our podcast, one thing we like to talk about now, because there's so many moving elements, changing things, is what has this time off been like for you?
It's been interesting to say the least. It's funny because the first half of this semester was particularly busy, and I've had in the past, so the teams that I've worked with have been men's and women's swimming and diving. That was like the first 7 years I was here at Michigan. And then I also have women's soccer and field hockey, and based on indoor practice facilities and stuff, I've had some pretty challenging schedules in the past, particularly in the winter semester. But for some reason, I don't know why this semester, it was definitely full days all the time. And so when this all happened, which was the week after our spring break, the first week I was like, actually, I could kind of use this time to catch up on some things. And so it was good in that regard. And then it's also been great to be able to explore some of the things that I've had on my list of interesting topics that aren't necessarily related directly to my daily duties, but just things that inspire me or intrigue me from a strength and conditioning point of view, from a nutrition standpoint, from like social interaction standpoint. So it's been a good time to explore those. And then also we've done a bunch of Zoom calls within our field. And so that's been really nice to have the time to connect with other strength and conditioning coaches, see what other programs are doing, and just have the time essentially to talk to individuals about the field and how we can better ourselves at Michigan and help our student athletes a little bit more.
That's great. Talk about taking a holistic approach to your education and things you want to catch up on.
Yeah. I tend to have a pretty wide range of interests. And so, I always have I'm also very much a list maker. And so I have lists of strength and conditioning things, and then lists of, this nutrition thing looks really interesting. And I also really I started listening and looking further into Simon Sinek and his work, which a lot of it relates directly back to, just the coaching aspect of things, is not so much the nuts and bolts of strength and conditioning, but how do you interact with people and coaches and all the different individuals that we get to work with on a daily basis.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm sure we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. One, not just the nuts and bolts of strength and conditioning, but two, at the end of the day, you're working with people, and everyone's different, and how people approach different things are obviously different. So it's awesome. So then second question we like to start our podcast with is, can you tell us a little bit of your why of getting into the strength and conditioning field and essentially the coaching field?
Yeah. So growing up, I come from a family of engineers, and the path was always, I was going to be an engineer, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. The solving problems, solving puzzles, all of that was very intriguing to me. But then when I was looking at schools, my backup school had just started an exercise science program, and I hadn't ever heard of it, didn't know what was involved. Looked through the program a little bit more. And then my top choice school, which was Syracuse, it's one of the oldest exercise science programs in the country. And so I like, this will be really neat. I like this. I like the approach. It's very, it's something that I could see doing day to day. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that I'm not necessarily somebody who could sit in a cubicle and computer work all day. But so I liked it, and I started off initially with the idea of doing a dual major. Quickly learned that there wasn't as much overlap as I anticipated, and that my my drive and passion really was with the exercise science portion. And so it started off initially, I come from a tennis background and I wanted to travel with a tennis player on tour. I had gone through some training in high school with someone who did that. And I just thought like, this would be awesome. So that was kind of the initial why behind doing it. And then as I started to learn more about the field and go through courses and really delve into it a bit more, I just really liked the coaching aspect and the fact that I could combine the elements that I liked of engineering to also having more personal interaction on a consistent basis and not sitting in the cubicle and everything. There's definitely more computer work than I ever anticipated, but it's something that is more interesting to me, I suppose. So it was fun because it combined both of those elements into one job. And it was funny because the first internship I did afterwards, I was like, no, I'm not gonna, like, collegiate's not my deal. I don't want to, I don't really see myself doing that and getting into that realm of the strength and conditioning field. And then I decided I needed my master's if I really wanted to get a full-time job. And I looked at Michigan, being from Michigan and everything. And so in the process of getting my master's, I actually really fell in love with it and I really enjoyed it. And was fortunate enough that they had a full-time position open after I graduated, and just been there ever since.
That's really cool. I think you took, your background with your family in engineering, and, really when you kind of come into sports medicine, we're also, solving puzzles on a daily basis. So it's not like you kind of threw that out the window. You kind of took it and made it your own, which is really cool. You kind of talked about your journey through undergrad and grad and starting to get interested in exercise science and things like that. Can you expand a little bit? You mentioned some of your internships and things like that. What sort of internships were you able to get, and which internships did you feel like really helped kind of push you into this direction?
So I remember the very first exercise science class I had as a freshman in undergrad. The first day of class, we had a speaker come and talk to us, and he had just opened his own facility in Syracuse and based it off of a model from Exos. At the time, it was Athletes Performance, but he came in and spoke to the class a lot about the internship and how much he enjoyed it, and essentially how it ended up shaping his future within strength and conditioning. And so, like, that day I made the goal that I wanted to get an internship with Exos. And so between my junior and senior years of undergrad, I was finally eligible. I felt comfortable in terms of the amount that I had learned in my studies to perform well in the role. And so applied, went through that process, and ended up getting an internship during a summer semester between my junior and senior year. Had an excellent time, both from the standpoint of the coaches that I got to work with while I was out there. I was in their Carson facility, which is at the it was the StubHub Center. I think it's now the Home Depot Center, or vice versa, where the Galaxy play out of. So it was fun because one year in LA, I'm coming from Michigan. I had never been to California before and stuff, and I get to spend 3 months, in LA and going to Hermosa Beach and picking out all the different
living the life.
Yeah.
So that definitely played a role. But then also it was neat to see in that facility they had USA Soccer, they had USA Chivas, and then they had the LA Galaxy along with Athletes Performance. And so to see all of the different frameworks that they were implementing out of the same facility, to learn from that, but then also to learn from some amazing coaches. The way that they structure their internship, at least when I went through it, was you spent half of the summer with one coach, and then you switched and spent the second half of the summer with another coach. And it was nice because it really gave you the time to ask them questions and build a relationship with the coach and really have them be mentors to you. And so the first half was Chang Lee, and he had come from the Red Sox. He had been at Exos for a while, and he still is with the organization out in California. But he was extremely meticulous in the biomechanic aspect and really looking at what the body needs to do in regards to the movement in order to perform whatever skill you're trying to. And so I'll never forget,
love that.
It's awesome. It really is. And it's a very broad view, 10,000 foot view of the field. And so it was really, that summer they had the World Cup in South Africa. And so it was on all the time. And the way that the facility was set up, we would eat lunch in the athlete lounge. And so he'd always come in and stuff. And we were watching one day, and he said, "Are you watching the ball? Are you watching the players?" And I'm like, "I guess I've been watching the ball." And he's like, "Don't ever watch the ball. He's like, watch the players." And so it was just very, like, being extremely green, my first internship. It's kind of hung with me since then. And for the most case, you can, like, if you watch the players, whether or not their kick or their shot or, whatever it might be is going to be successful. So I learned quite a bit from him. And then the second half of the summer, I was with a coach, and her name is Jenny Noyles, and she's with Exo still up in Minnesota. And just extremely fun, wonderful coach. She puts a lot of really great content out right now on Instagram, and just a really good person, really fun to be with. And for her, we had like NHL groups in the morning, and then we had high school groups in the afternoon. So from a learning perspective, it was great because I had individuals who were, 14 to 18 and learning motor skills and really developing as athletes to, some NHL vets who've been playing in the league for 12, 14 years. And so, it was really fun to see that range and work with that variety. And then also from just a coaching observation standpoint, seeing how she handled working with NHL vets, and then how she worked with high school and collegiate athletes. And so some really, really good lessons, really fun times there. And
most
so,
definitely. I mean, not to interrupt, but
no,
the exposure you probably got there, not just to movement of different age groups, and seeing how motor learning occurs throughout the spectrum, again, from someone who's young to someone who's older, but then also the communication aspect of having to coach someone who's maybe like 10, 11 versus, again, someone who's a vet. So that's definitely was a great experience.
Yeah.
So then after Exos and you're okay. After Exos in college, you went on to get your master's at Eastern Michigan, or did you work at University of Michigan before that?
So the way that the program worked, it was I got my master's through Eastern. It's just like 10 miles down the road from Michigan. But because the athletic department at Michigan is fully self-funded, they give, it's a GA position. And at the time we had the choice to either take credits at U of M or we could go to Eastern. But it was the cost covered 9 credits at Michigan or 18 at Eastern. And so I went ahead and chose Eastern and went through that program. The GAs before me had all gone through the program at Eastern as well. So school there and got my master's there, but I was coaching simultaneously at Michigan.
That's awesome. So you're able to apply things you were learning on a daily basis into work right away versus, I know sometimes in PT school, how some programs do it is you learn for 2 years straight, then you get to go do your clinicals.
Yeah.
So it was probably a good experience to be able to apply what you were learning almost right away.
Very much so.
So then working now at a university like Michigan, I mean, I went to Penn State, so I know how amazing it is to be in the Big Ten, how many networking opportunities that offers, and some doors that definitely open. Can you tell us maybe what it's like to work at Michigan right now and what opportunities that has afforded you?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I had no idea of how much the group at Michigan would be able to connect me with other professionals in the field. And then also how fortunate we are at Michigan regarding, resources, particularly with professional development. And so when I started, our director and former assistant director both came from the USOC, and they were really well connected within the field. And then also we've got a couple individuals on staff who've been there for a while. So they knew the lay of Michigan. They knew they had been through multiple directors of the program and everything. So again, great resources to learn from, and then to help connect me and introduce me to individuals within the field. I think our director, some of his mentors were Meg and Mike Stone from East Tennessee State, and he was with them over at the Scottish Institute of Sport. And I think that he introduced me to them pretty early on, and the way that they approach the field from both a coaching perspective, but then also the research and more academic side, and how they integrate the two, and what they've been able to contribute to the field is just astounding to me. And so I've learned quite a bit from those two individuals, and then just countless others as well. As far as the professional development goes and the resources we have at Michigan, I mean, we opened the new facility, our SPC, in January of 2018. So to go from a basement that was pretty small to that facility has been incredible. There's part of my heart that still lives in the bunker.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, there always will be.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's where I became a coach. And so,
I love that you call it the bunker.
Yeah, that actually, it was funny. It actually came from, at the time, President Obama was speaking at the facility, and they needed basically a safe place for him. And there's two doors in an elevator, and they're all on the same wall, and they're like, this will be perfect. So that was kind of how we started calling it. Yeah. We started calling it the bunker. But so from the facility standpoint, and basically we're just limited by our creativity, what we've got available in regards to training. But then also on the professional development side, we have the opportunity to go to 2 conferences every year. And then depending on, where our budget is and everything, I was really fortunate and got to go to an FRC course a couple years ago. And just being able to have that opportunity. I mean, those, as you guys well know, within your field too, certification courses and continuing education, there's definitely a financial commitment there. And so to have that covered by the university, it's just, it takes a huge burden off. And then also it just affords us the opportunity to continue learning so that we can bring best practices back to the University of Michigan and help our student athletes as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a lot of really great things there. One, you've shouted out a ton of amazing mentors that, help really shape who you become later, along with your experience that kind of comes. And then clearly very hungry to learn. And I think that's such an important quality in the sports medicine field, because everything changes. It feels like sometimes on a day-to-day basis, something that you did for loading is no longer as good as this type of loading. And so I think, the ability to get those things covered through the university shows a lot of support for you guys and support for their teams. You have quite a few certifications, shows that you've taken some courses. Which courses do you feel like were really beneficial for you in either understanding the athlete, understanding movement, reintegrating some ideas of loading? What sort of courses and classes do you feel like helped kind of push you to a higher level of excellence for you?
Yeah, great question. I think, of course, the CSDS, that's always going to be the main certification for our field. And within that, the connections and the content that the NSCAA puts out. Just so many incredible articles within the various journals that they have. And then also an opportunity to contribute to those as well. Because they've got, like a very scientific journal that has, actual studies, review processes, all of that, to something where it's a little bit more general, but you can still share your experiences, your ideas. So that certification, I think it's no brainer. That's the number one certification that you need to have within this field. And then also USA weightlifting. It's very, I would say for me, it's a necessity. And I think for the most part, for the strength and conditioning profession, I would say across the board that it's a necessity, because having uniform terminology across the board, there's a lot of discrepancy within the field as far as, like just very simple terminology, like a hang clean versus power clean from the hang. And so having a uniform terminology for one reason, but then also understanding, the mechanics behind the lift. There's a reason that weightlifting is a sport within itself. So really having a thorough understanding of what the different positions are, why you need to be in certain positions, understand that fully, because the other thing too is once you fully understand it, as a practitioner, it helps you relate it to other sports. And so one of the things that we run into, particularly at the collegiate level, is time constraints, right? We're limited to a specific number of hours. And so the Olympic lifts, you get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, and being able to coach them well and being able to demonstrate to the student athletes and explain to them why doing these movements is going to help with their sport performance is critical. And taking the certification courses, I think that's a critical step within the field. So those I would say are probably the two main, obviously first aid CPR, that's always going to be a given.
Yeah. yeah. Hopefully that's a duh to listeners out there, but I'm glad you touched on that.
Exactly. And then, as far as the other additional ones go, I really enjoyed the FRC course. We've also had an individual on our staff take DNS, which is dynamic neuromuscular stabilization. And I think both of those kind of cross over a little bit into more of, like sports medicine versus performance role, but both have courses that are geared more towards strength and conditioning professionals, which I think is really, really nice, because then, like, at least for me, I know individuals who are familiar with both of those in terms of like our athletic trainers or our physical therapists, bridging that gap between athletic medicine and strength and conditioning has been both much easier. And then also it's sparked some creative ideas of how we make the transition and return to play from, being injured and being only with a trainer or physical therapist and moving back into strength and conditioning. But I've really enjoyed that course and implementing the principles behind it into the strength and conditioning programs, because it's, I've really taken a lot to positioning and emphasizing positioning during the lifts, because 18 to 22-year-olds are pretty darn resilient. And so you look at them and it's like, that's not the right position. Yes, you can do it, but it's going to negatively impact you later on down the road. So really being able to emphasize that and build good motor patterns or break habits that they've developed in high school to give them a solid foundation, because, they still have an entire life left to live after collegiate athletics. And so I want to set them up in a good position to, live a healthy lifestyle and not have to continually be, seeking physical therapy or what for injuries that they sustain in college. So that part I've really enjoyed. So I would say those are the NSCA, the SDS certification for them, the USA weightlifting, and FRC.
What I love that you just touched on is, if we're thinking big themes here, you touched on a lot of the basics to start, like the foundation. Individuals that you really do need getting into a strength and conditioning field, especially when you're working with athletes or collegiate athletes. What I also love that you touched on is this other realm, if you want to call it, of different methods like DNS, like FRC, that you can marry with the basics. again, to help improve the athlete overall and or help communication across the field. Terminology is so important, whether you're working with strength coaches, whether you're working with ATCs. Like you said, if everyone is on the same page, it makes life so much easier. Because I mean, I find, and I'm sure you guys can relate, sometimes when you're discussing a case with someone, you both are saying the same thing, you're just saying it differently.
Yeah.
So at Michigan, when you are communicating with your athletic trainer, when you guys are communicating with physical therapists, can you touch on a little more how you've gone about doing that? Or if there's, let's say there's been a case where maybe communication style hasn't matched, how you've handled that?
Yeah. And like another really good question. I would say it's interesting because when I first started in this field and like the first several years I was in it, I heard a lot about how unique the dynamic between athletic medicine and strength and conditioning is at Michigan. And we all have a really good relationship with our athletic trainers, and how that's not typically the case, which is really unfortunate. And I hope that that's changing within the collegiate system.
Yeah.
But I honestly can't say that I, so far with any trainers or anything, have had any sort of disagreement or haven't been able to match communication styles with them. It's really nice now at our new facility because they're literally across the hall. So it's like, oh, I have a question, I'm just going to get it.
Nice.
So nice. And even before, like for the most part, they were upstairs. We just had to walk upstairs to chat with them. So again, that was nice. Our athletic training staff, at least the individuals that I've worked with at Michigan directly, it's nice because they've all kind of, taken the time to come to the weight room and see what the programs look like and watch some training sessions. We've had some really good integration with, if we do have an athlete that's doing return to play, like our athletic trainer has been in the room at the same time as, training session. And, like, for example, with soccer and ACL injury, like the athletic trainer comes into the weight room, takes them through some of the lower body protocols as they're transitioning back into the weight room fully while I'm working with the rest of the team. And then once they can do the rest of the lift that we've got planned, then he's like, yeah, here you go. She's gotten this portion and this is what we subbed in. More often than not, we'll talk earlier in the day, kind of during our down period, about the specific players and what modifications we need and adjustments and stuff. And so, I pretty much have daily communication with the two athletic trainers that I work directly with for soccer and field hockey.
Nice.
And so I think from that standpoint, it's really a good dynamic across the board at Michigan here, and really working with them and like tossing out ideas. And I think on both sides, everyone's been really open to new ideas. I know, like right now I'm working with the athletic trainer for soccer to kind of revamp and basically add some more screening protocols in the fall for the team to see, like what are the main elements that we see in terms of injury? How can we prevent them? And then how can we, what does that look like from a screening standpoint? So a good collaboration there that we started about a month ago. So yeah, we've got a pretty good dynamic. And I think here at Michigan, we're again, very fortunate to have some wonderful people on both sides.
Sounds great. It sounds like you guys have really put together a really collaborative effort in the athlete. I think one of the things you had chatted about too is the ability to bridge the gap with some commonalities in knowledge as far as, you taking FRC courses and DNS courses and trying to understand, the athletic medicine side, as well as them trying to understand your strength and conditioning side. And I think, two teams basically coming together for the greater good takes your interdisciplinary team from good to kind of great. Being able to develop things together and see things together. I think that's so important in just treatment of the athlete. Kind of piggybacking off of that, the good to great sort of thing. What sort of things do you feel like makes a great strength and conditioning coach?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think first and foremost, and this, this could go for anybody within the athletic medicine field, and just, I guess the population in general, but continually learning and being open to new ideas and having that open mindset to allow you to, essentially question, is this the best way? Because there's no growth without having an open mindset. And, I think within this field, compared to a lot of fields, it's still relatively young, right? And we're looking at like maybe, getting closer to 40 years old for the field. That's in the grand scheme of things, that's not really that many years. And so, like we kind of mentioned earlier in the discussion, things are constantly changing. There's better ways coming out to train the body or to train specific individuals. And so I think, continual learning and an open mindset is one thing. But then also it's, I think it's a critical element to be able to communicate. And that's, in person, emails, but really express yourself well. And then also being able to collaboratively communicate so that you can work together to find what is the best solution for your client, for your student athlete, for any individual that you may be working with. I think those two elements really do make a good strength and conditioning coach a great one. And, particularly on the communication side of things, I'm sure you guys have run into it from clients you've worked with to if you have worked with sport coaches or you've played for sport coaches. Every personality is different. There's commonalities between some, but really being able to navigate different personalities and work well with them to accomplish the goal, that is an invaluable skill, and one that, again, just continually learning different ways to work with different personalities. But those two things really, I think, make a good strength coach a great one.
Yeah. Those are two really good points you touched on. So I hope our listeners take that to heart, really think about it, reflect on it a little bit, and see how they can marry that into their current practice, whether they're a strength coach, whether they're a PT, because at the end of the day, both of those things apply to everyone across the field, no matter what discipline you may be in, which is great. So it sounds like with everything we talked about and with your journey, you've been extremely fortunate to have some great mentors, to have some great experiences. Is there anything along the way that really challenged you, or maybe that was a little bit of an obstacle, whether it be you had a hard time getting an athlete or a coach to buy in on something? I'd say maybe a coworker you didn't really agree with, but it sounds like the team over there is great. Whether it be gender bias, whether it be having to challenge yourself a little more because you've been at one place for so long. And I guess, how did you overcome that obstacle?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the times too, it's just a matter of perspective and viewpoint. As far as obstacles or challenges go, those are always going to be there. And it's just a matter of how you view it. And I think for the most part, my initial reaction is I really haven't run into many obstacles or challenges. But again, I think it's more because I've perceived them as like, it's just another thing that I'm learning within the field. Some lessons obviously are more fun than others, but, I think I started really young. When I got to Michigan, the GA, I was 21 years old. So I had a handful of student athletes that I coached that were 1 to 2 years older than me. And so from initially when I found that out, and, you get the rosters and you get your flight, a document with everyone's birthdays on it and everything. And I realized that I was like, I can't say anything about my age right now. So, from like a confidence standpoint and walking into a session and saying like, you're 2 years older than me, but I need you to listen to me. In my mind, like, how do I represent myself and present myself in a way that they like age isn't a factor. And so that was kind of the first thing I needed to focus on. And that just came down to being as professional as I can be, really knowing what I'm preaching to them. So from the get-go, keeping things as simple as possible, really from like a design standpoint, and then also like expressing to them, I don't, men's swimming was the very first team I was assigned to here. And that was my main responsibility within the first year. And I assisted with a bunch of other teams. But, going to the coaches and going to the student athletes too, and letting them know, like, I don't know everything about the sport of swimming. I know very little about the sport. I've swam before. I had worked with them a little bit at Syracuse, but I mean, this was a championship level team, and the traditions were so strong within the community that I needed to somehow figure out how to integrate myself, and then, make them see, like, I'm here to help you get better. So that was really like the first challenge, both the age and then integrating myself within that team. But again, like that year, the number of lessons I learned that couldn't be taught from a textbook or in a class setting were invaluable. And they're lessons that, again, perspective. Yeah, it was within the moment, it probably was really challenging. But when I look back on it, it was like, these were some of the best lessons that I've learned. And, I remember it being a really good time as opposed to like fighting a challenge every day.
Yeah, that's just a comment on that before you bring up, I'm sure, another great point. But I love that you brought up, it's about perspective a little bit. I saw a quote the other day and it reminded me of this. It's talking about a trainer working with a professional athlete, just to give a little bit of context. And in the quote, he talks about, we never really saw problems. We just saw situations in need of a solution. So even though you had those moments of, I'm a little young, I'm only 2 years older than them, you didn't let that manifest. You just took what you knew and was maybe a little more professional than you thought you had to be, which at the end of the day, you'd rather that than not professional at all, right? So
yeah.
I love that you brought those points up, because I'm sure there are a lot of listeners out there who are maybe in a similar situation and they have a little thought in the back of their mind thinking, I'm a little young, or, I haven't really experienced this yet. And instead of dwelling on that thought, you just did what you needed to do in order to be better and in order to make your athlete better. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And I think, again, being really fortunate as a GA that I had the opportunity to really take responsibility of a team, and our director affording me that opportunity. That doesn't happen at all universities. And that really, being able to have that ownership immediately put this greater level of responsibility on me to, how am I going to make this the best situation that I can? And then just also to kind of address, like a gender bias thing. Again, it's going to happen. And I'm sure there's reverse sides too, like we had
For sure.
we had a male dietitian here, and the number of times he talked, he's like, there's not really many males in this field, like
Yeah.
and stuff. And so, it definitely goes both ways. But I think that at the end of the day, just be the best coach you can be the best physical therapist you can be, the best athletic trainer. And that removes, for the most part, will remove gender from the equation. And, I've run into it a little bit. I, again, have been fortunate. Our director and our staff here very much, like, they don't see each other. And they just see, like, are you a good coach, or do you need to get better? Or, how can we help you get better? And so, but, like from a sport coach perspective, sometimes, again, like anytime you go to a university setting, a lot of the times you're going to have coaches that have been in the field. And, not only was I young, but I was, a female. And it's this getting them to understand you and see that you're trying to do the best that you possibly can for their student athletes. I think that plays a huge role in taking away the, any sort of gender bias that may be there. And then also at the end of the day, like we're not going to change individuals, especially if they've been doing this for 20, 30 plus years. So then it just becomes, it's not a personal thing, right? It's nothing against me as a coach. It's just, that's their belief system. That's their deal. So then you just shift focus to what can I do to provide the very best possible program I can for this student athlete. So I think not going into situations where it's like, oh, I'm a female. Should I, am I capable of doing this? Can I do this? Going into the situation of like, I want to be the very best coach I can be. What do I need to do in order to do that? It has nothing to do with me being a female. It's, have I done the right prep work? Have I learned as much as I can? Have I been open to new ideas? Have I talked to the client or student athlete or, individual and the coaching staff to understand what they're trying to accomplish so that I can merge my goals with their goals to provide the best product, right? Like we're service providers. And so, as an individual, male or female, what can I do on my end to produce that best possible product?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's huge. The idea of not coming into a situation looking at, your age or your gender or whatever it is, coming into it saying, I feel like I prepared for this and I feel like I have something to contribute, and really working to show your worth, show that you are going to work really hard for them and you're going to continue learning and you're going to respect the current beliefs and traditions and things that they're doing as well. I think sometimes that's a huge factor that we don't always think about is, these college sports, these clinics that we go into, whatever it may be, they all have things that they've been working on already and they've had the experience of being in the field for a long time. And sometimes you have to respect that as well, which can get tricky, sometimes. And I know for myself on, the comment of age, I was pretty young when I finished my doctorate program. And so that initially was definitely, for myself, something that I was like, oh man, like I'm treating older patients. I'm with clinicians that have been working for much longer. So there was that initial question, when I'm kind of giving myself my own pep talks of like, oh, like, gotta get buy-in. But at the end of the day, you just gotta take a step back and be like, I've done the work. I'm gonna work hard for you. And I think people really respect that when they show, or when you show that you're working for them, you're part of that team and you're listening to them. You've talked about a lot of really good pieces of advice already, really being open to learning, open to communicating, providing and being the best you can as far as a strength and conditioning coach or a person. What are some, maybe other clean little pieces of advice you would give a very young person starting to go on a similar journey as you? Or what are some pieces of advice you found you were giving yourself throughout your journey to kind of push you to that next step?
Yeah, I think, it's one of those situations where tying in with being open-minded and continually learning and continually finding ways to be a better practitioner. The toughest thing, and something that I'm definitely still working on, and I know will for my career be something that I work on, but finding the balance, and it's a very fine line, but finding the balance between knowing that you can always be better and always striving for being better and striving for a level of perfection, but then also balancing that with confidence, and understanding like I know I'm delivering a good product, a good service. I've done my homework, I've done the research, and being able to combine those two, because at the end of the day, like there's it's very challenging to go into a situation and say like, I'm always learning. I want to be better. What can you tell me? But then also really being able to convey to whomever you're working with, I have confidence in what I'm doing. Like it can be a very hard thing to navigate sometimes, especially for coaches, because you want to show that, yes, I'm learning. Yes, I'm trying to be better. Yes, I'm seeking out help and assistance from other individuals from a broad spectrum, but not having it come off to a sport coach is like, this person doesn't know what she's talking about. She's trying to figure out all the answers from everybody else and do what she's doing, right? So being able to then take this information you've gathered and then deliver it with a level of confidence and conviction because you've done that work, right? And it's a fine balance and something that, like I still always continue to work on. And I don't know if I'll ever fully master it, maybe if I'm still coaching when I'm 80 or so. Like old woman wisdom, but really, really getting that balance of doing the work and being open-minded, but delivering it with confidence and conviction.
Yeah, I think that's a huge statement and a fine balance, like you said, because you can definitely tip it to being overly confident and then kind of being not as confident where it comes off as you're like trying to figure it all out when you've already got the job. And I think for me, I take students, and that's always something we're working on is, this patient, you came off like you knew all the stuff in the world when, this patient's already been through PT and knows what works for them. And you got to listen to them. To the other end of the spectrum where I know that student knows things because we've done the mentorship, we've done the work, and they kind of freeze up a little bit. And so it's a definite harder thing to teach and to learn to have that confidence. And I think that's why, people are always going to be working on it until apparently they're 80 and have old woman wisdom. But yeah, I think that's a really good comment. And I think that's something people can take away, a little bit from this conversation as far as being a younger clinician and being nervous about age or whatever it may be. So thank you for that. Any other final comments, Lindsay?
No, I think that was a great piece of advice, and I hope people take it to heart. I hope they learn how to reflect so that they can find that balance, because I'm sure it is a lot of self-reflection, at least for me, because I know I still struggle with that too. But we just really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today and giving our listeners some big things to think about.
No, thank you guys for having me and for reaching out. I think this is a great thing you're putting together, and great work in terms of getting all aspects of this, health and wellness field on the same page. And you guys are doing great work. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you for listening to the Women Leaders in Sports Medicine podcast. This podcast is for you to take a step closer to your dreams. Visit www.womenleadersinsportsmedicine.com to join our roundtables, learn about our mentorship programs, and to let us know what you want to hear. Have a great day, and remember, it's your time to lead.